excited to be with you again. Today, we had a bit of a last minute change. Our original guest, Christopher Murray, was not able to be with us today due to dealing with students in his school. But we have another amazing young man, Quincy Wise, who's going to be speaking with us about the same topic, building a positive school environment for our students in public schools. I'm so excited to have Quincy because he's one of our own. He is an intern with the organization, and he's going to talk about his experience and some of the things that he's been doing as it relates to keeping kids safe and building a safe environment for kids. Before we get started, some quick reminders. We want you to follow us on our social media pages. Right now, this live is live on Shaniqua Emore page, as well as iRay's page on Facebook and under LinkedIn under Shaniqua Emore. Please follow both pages. So follow iRay's Inc. On all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel because you'll be the first to get updates about our content and videos and things that we're working on, things that we're doing. We're doing amazing things and we want you to be a part of it. Also, don't forget to follow me on Shaniqua Emore under Facebook and LinkedIn so you can get some more personalized updates on what's going on in the organization. Uh, Last but not least, I want you to do me a favor. If you have not already subscribed to our podcast, ATL Rise, please do so. We have amazing content. We're talking about very similar issues just in the metro Atlanta area. Tonight we'll be recording again. Our next episode will be released this Friday. And we want you to also make sure you are the first to get the notification for that episode, but you have to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbeam, iHeartRadio, whatever is your preference. We want you to make sure you are subscribing to our podcast. Our last podcast was actually talking about reimagining the Georgia public school education system. So great things you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss out on what we're doing. Now today, let's fast forward and jump right into it. We have Quincy Wise with us. And Quincy, we're excited to have you. And just thank you for being flexible. Quincy had no idea he was going to be a part of this fireside chat. He was just thrown into it. But that is our job as social workers. We're flexible and we're adaptable, and we have to be able to meet the demands of what's going on in the moment, right? So, Quincy, thank you so much for being here and for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So people are probably wondering who's Quincy. And we don't have a formal bio on you right now. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. What made you go into social work?
So I'm Quincy. I'm from New York City, born and raised in Harlem. Got my undergrad degree from the King school system, and I'm currently an MSW student at Columbia doing an internship at the Amazing Iris. Quite honestly, at first I didn't want to go into social work. I wanted to study psychology, but as I got my degree in psychology, I kept feeling like there's something more I can do. There's something more I can do than just study people and see people as one zeros. And a lot of people think that maybe I should try to do social work where I would have more of a role in multiple different aspects of somebody's life and growth and development.
I love that, Quincy. So many people are probably not clear about what social work is. And one of the things that I love about our industry and our field is that it's evolving. And social work is many things, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what you believe social work is for you or to you as a student right now?
As a student right now, I feel like social work is everything, quite honestly. It's advocacy, it's a lot of policy, it's a lot of being able to get out there and do the hard work that a lot of industries don't honestly give us enough credit for. When you see a lot
Mhm.
of these changes, these laws, a lot of them are led or at least held up heavily by soldiers. And for me right now, it is social emotional health, a lot of mental health, mental wellness, mindfulness.
I love that. I love how you and we're gonna jump into our topic, but I want to stop there for a moment and and acknowledge and lift up what you mentioned, and that really is the hard work that we do. A lot of times we're not credited, right, for that hard work. And some people are probably wondering, what does that look like? And it really varies, right? Social work, it is all of those things. There are so many hats, and so many avenues and dimensions within social work. There is the advocacy piece, there's the policy piece that we don't talk enough about. There's the clinical piece, there's the administrative piece, there's the community organizing piece. There's so much to social work. And yes, we are very essential to what happens in our communities, to keeping humanity safe and pushing us forward. And so I love that you're really hitting on all those things, especially as a student. But I want to go now into our topic. You're a social work intern with the organization. Tell us, what has that been like for you being in that environment? What have been some of the challenges that you've noticed that kids are facing today?
Yeah. So starting off, I never really thought that I would want to actually work in the schools. I actually started off, my first major was education, and I believe that. But since being here with iRaise, it has actually made that decision. I really get along with the students, they get along with me, and I actually started growing very comfortable with the environment. But they face a lot of challenges, especially in this day and age of social media. Interconnected everything is. Situations that happen in school aren't only being left at school, they're also being brought home. They're on the kids' commute home. Um, Privacy. Children, they're not given that level of privacy anymore from their friends, parents, or teachers. They don't ever have that safe personal space to grow on their own either. One thing that I have definitely also been seeing is a lot of things relating to like different cultures. We're going to be a very like diverse world, and
Yes,
we need to have administration staff, faculty members that also represent those cultures.
love that. I love that. This is all really, really important. And I want to just sort of backtrack. You talked about social media, and I got to say that every time I spoke with a principal and asked, what is the main issue that your kids are facing in this school? I would always hear the number one issue is social media. And I want you to tell me a little more about that. What is it looking like in the school working with these students? What are you noticing about the challenges that kids are facing? And you touched on it a little bit as it relates to the privacy aspect, but what are the challenges that you're noticing kids are facing with social media? And how is that impacting them in schools?
So one thing that I'm seeing that they're facing is that, as I said, when a problem starts in school, it doesn't stop at school. So they get into an argument on the playground, at lunch, in the classroom. Another student might follow them on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, cyberbullying, and the school doesn't know where to go at that point. They don't know where place is in that situation because even though it's a situation that started at school, it is happening at home. It becomes a back and forth between the school, the parent, and the students. And one of the quickest solutions that we all say is, why do you have them? Block them. That's very hard to do with social media, honestly, especially since a lot of us didn't grow up with social media. These kids have. It's really ingrained in that they think and the way that they see that part of their social lives. So it's been very hard to take that away from them. Sorry.
No, I love that. Quincy, you said something that just really spoke to me in so many levels, and that is, we're trying to take this thing from them, right? Almost like it's an evil thing. Let me take it from you. It's not good for you. I've been always opposed to that, by the way. But I think it's so important because what you said makes so much sense. Social media is ingrained in our kids. It's a part of their lives, and it is all they know, right? They were born into a world that was social media existed. Whereas, for example, where I grew up, we didn't have social media until I was in college. So I just told you my age. And that's when Facebook and those other Black Planet and all those other old social media platforms existed. But we lived in a world without social media. Our kids have only known a world in social media. And I think we have to acknowledge that, right? And not just acknowledge it, but understand that, and understand that this is the way in which kids socialize, and they're going to. We can't stop them, right? And so what do? We learn that, we understand it, but we also have to make sure, and we had a really good fireside chat on this before. We also have to make sure that our interventions and our strategies and methodologies are in alignment with what kids need. So we can't say we're meeting kids where they are, but we're like, well, don't do social media, because that's we're being hypocritical by doing that. If we're really meeting kids where they are, we have to meet them where they are. That means if they're in social media, we need to understand that world and find ways to integrate social media into our approaches and connecting with students. I want to know if you have any response to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. But I
No
also
worry.
find that because the way we think and the way people should interact with each other online is very different than they do. So
Okay.
up with I grew up with the internet. Facebook came out when I was in elementary school, and it was
Mhm.
always I don't know, always only add family members. But as I grew up, it was add whoever I want, add who I think I could be friends with,
Right.
where I like. The rules change. Even now, like you play games online, you get their social media, you're in a group chat, but you don't know who that person is. So
Right.
one token is meet them where they're at, but also setting those boundaries where we go back to having rules, going back to let's not just add anybody and whoever on social media. Like the show Catfish honestly does a really good job at showing we shouldn't do that. Not everyone is who they are on the other end.
Yeah. And Quincy, that you made such an interesting point. It reminds me of it's really interesting. A client that I had, actually, what I raised about a year or two ago. Very interestingly, he was a student in school who had no friends. No one got along with him because he was always, there was just so much contention in the environment, and he really struggled with socializing with people in person. But he had over 1 million followers. So, and that we typically see that, right? Like as a trend, kids that may not know how to socialize in person, um, may just be entirely popular online, and they're just different people, and they get to live out that sort of different identity online in a place that may be safe for them, right? Because we're also talking about safety in this conversation, right? So safety for them might be I get to be who I want to be
Hmm.
online, and a different person. I sort of get to create that identity. Whereas in real life and in school, I'm not that. I don't get to have that popularity or those connections with friends that I want.
Right. I feel like that's honestly one of the benefits of social media. You do get to love that duality. And it does your own social media pages begin to feel safe space for you. But also being able to keep that um in your head that this isn't the reality of it. I'm
Right.
gonna have to get off online, the world, go buy eggs and milk. I'm going to have to also keep mind of my physical and like public persona.
Yeah. And that's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. And you talked about that duality of identity and sort of being one way online and one way in person, but then having to come to reality of, okay, this is not your physical reality, it's your virtual reality. It's almost like the physical versus the virtual realities sometimes our kids are dealing with. Um, and I think, and we haven't figured it out, right? But I think this is an area that we really need to spend more time understanding, because our kids need a lot of support in that area.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like technology and the virtual world has been growing so fast
Oh, yeah.
that it's really hard keep up, especially mental health fields have been kept in the dark for so long. It hasn't been supported as much as they should have been, that we're
Right.
getting the crumbs of everything. And the
Right.
reality, we should be getting the fruits of everything because we're the ones that supports everyone when at the end of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely. And tell me about what, of course, I know what your internship looks like, but what do you do in the schools with children? What's your goal and what are your responsibilities?
So my goals, honestly, I've been very wide, very open. It's just improve upon their daily lives, both at home and in the school settings. And a lot of it is a lot of visual counseling and therapy sessions, a lot of group sessions, just giving children like that space so that they can have fun but also learn about their behaviors. I also work with children that have some mental health issues.
Mm.
The teachers, the staffers, and their parents all together. It's not me making decisions alone. It's us making decisions together as a group for what best benefit the child. And one of
Mhm.
the things I really is keep the child in mind of that they can also be a part of that decision making process. One of the biggest
Right.
challenges though is
Mhm.
that
Yep, go ahead. No, no. Mhm.
sorry, children are
No,
scared
I'm sorry.
of telling their parents. Tell them that
Mhm.
I was about confidentiality.
Mhm.
It hurts yourself or someone else, or it's a really bad situation that another adult needs to be involved. It's between you, and that really helps them open up.
Yeah, I think that's so important is the confidentiality piece. And a lot along with that, I think it's a duality because parents also a lot of times may not want their kids to be a part of signing up for mental health services in schools because they're afraid that it's going to be on their child's record. One of the things that I love about our organization is kids don't, it's not on their record when they sign up for our mental health services. So they get that nice clinical support in school, but it's also not a part of their academic record, and that gives the parents that peace of mind. Because I think a lot of times and public school education, we can target kids.
Yes.
And based on prior behavior patterns or prior issues that have happened, or even things like having an IEP or having some type of intervention services, having that on your record sometimes can make you a target. I've seen it and I've heard parents, talk about it and complain about it, and it's real. Sometimes, especially Black boys, are targeted. Um, when they have issues or have challenges that are emotional or social, sometimes schools are targeting them as aggressive and problems, and unfortunately those are the kids that they essentially will start to suspend or put on detention. And I know you're at the school, we can hear the bell. um, but I'm wondering, how do we undo that? How do we reimagine what it looks like to really support children, especially Black boys that may not feel safe in schools because they're targeted, and because they're not understood or don't feel understood.
I bring that back to representation. There's a severe lack of Black men in the education system, especially when you look at elementary schools. You need people that come from it that's able to speak that same language, that can understand that experience that people are coming from. It comes a lot to the responsibility of the school. We like to think of it as it's the child that needs all the help, it's the child that needs to be fixed. Sometimes it's the system that needs to be fixed
Mm,
because there is one group is detrimental to them, then maybe we need to go back and look to how that system was built, how is it functioning, and is that system working for this group or just the rest of the individuals?
I love that. So what I'm hearing you say is sometimes we're blaming the kids and we're pushing our problems on the children as problems because we're essentially not ready. We lack either the willingness, capacity, or methodologies to change the system because the real issue is the defect in the system and the approach that we're using, but we're shifting the blame to the children as problems. Yep. I love that because that's exactly what's happening. And I'm a big advocate in reimagining our education system. because education and originally, especially public school education, was not built to address kids' mental health. So that's a problem right there, right? So if it was originally not created to address kids' mental health or to support their mental health, that means that there is a deficit or there is a lack or there is a gap that exists in our policies, in our practices, in our funding. And so what we're seeing is that gap. There is a gap that's not being addressed. And so we tend to want to push the blame because it's easier to push the blame onto the kids and say they're the problems, they have issues. Whereas the reality is the issue is our system, our policies, are they designed to support kids' mental health? Do we have the methodologies in place to support kids in school to make them feel safe? Do we have a mental health curriculum that ensures all kids understand what mental health is? Is it embedded in our practice, in our culture, in our environment? Do kids feel psychologically safe? Are we creating an environment for them to feel safe? We have to at some point step back and begin to look at, why are kids acting out? Why are they fighting? Why are they cursing? Because even in that, they're telling us something, and we need to be able to hear them.
Yes, I actually had a situation this past semester with a student who was constantly cursing, and I had to step back and say, look at my own background. I was like, no, I grew up with people cursing around me. I grew up in that type of neighborhood. Sometimes that just became embedded into my language, and I would begin to use that at school. But when you're looking at, especially children of color, you see that as, no, this children is bad. And it's time, sometimes you do have to step back as a professional and say, okay, where's this coming from?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what social work is about, right? It's environment. And we're talking about safety of kids or feeling safe in schools. We can't have this conversation without including the larger environment. So what's around them. And I think that's where we failed our children. We are consistently looking at the immediate environment in which they're in, but we're not looking at home environment, community environment, political environment, and how all those things influence what kids are feeling when they get into the school building. And I think that is what, of course, the social work lens is bringing the environment perspective into the conversation to say when kids come into school, they just fought through community violence or being hungry or, or being yelled at and cursed out or, being attacked on a train or looking over their head because they hear gunshots or all these things just to get to the building. And then when they get to the building, they're, what do you call these things? Help me out here, Quincy. They're being scanned and stuff, and they're being told that they can't be trusted, and they're treated like prisoners. And then after they get through that, security guards are yelling at them, and they got to get to class. And by the time they
Mhm.
sit in that classroom, they have to fight through all of that stuff, sit in that chair. How in the world are we creating a school where kids feel safe if they're going through that?
We're not. We're to the problem. It's a big problem with the school to jail pipeline, honestly. If the schools feel like prisons and children are spending most of their lives in there, where are they going to feel safest? Where are they going to feel the most comfortable? They're getting, as you said, they're getting the metal detectors at schools. I saw one my entire life, actually, working with IRAs. And I was really glad to see that IRAs was actually in school providing services for these children. They are getting yelled at in the hallways. They're getting demeaned, quite honestly. And it's just perpetuating this idea that the children have no say, they have no choice. And as you said, if they're coming from neighborhood violence, they're coming from being hungry, they're coming from having to constantly look over their shoulder, should they be having to feel like that in school? It doesn't make them tougher. It doesn't give them character. It hurts them. It scares them.
Hmm. I felt that, Quincy. That was very real. I'm thinking about last week at one of our schools. I won't mention it, the name, um, but we were holding a class that day. It was a mental health class that we're running at one of our schools, and you know, half the class missed our class because they were held up with metal detectors. They were stripped and searched, and I mean, not stripped in a sense they had to take their clothes off, but they were searched at the door before they can get into the building. They missed their test, and then they missed their mental health class. So how much we're essentially robbing them, not just in character and integrity and dignity and respect, but also in the tangible things like academics. You know, how these things rob our kids. And school should not be a place where kids are being robbed, but where they're being poured into. And we have to start looking at ways to really reform our practices to make sure our kids do have choices, because that is another thing you mentioned, Quincy. Our kids essentially are feeling powerless and feeling like they don't have a choice, and they have to succumb to what's happening to them, or they're essentially just going through life and things are happening, but they don't have the choice and the power to make decisions. So there is um so much that we can talk about on this topic, but I know we're winding up here because we're just hitting about the 30-minute mark. But what can we do, Quincy, to create an environment where kids truly are safe, where they're not demeaned, where they have choice, and where they are respected, and they're when they come into school, into the school, it's a place not of imprisonment, but a place of freedom for them, a place of learning that cultivates their creativity, and a place that really truly connects to their potential and helps to bring that out. How do we create that kind of safe environment for our kids?
Ooh, there's a lot of different avenues we can take. The first one I'm thinking of is that we definitely need to give the students more choice. I feel like student governments to be in all schools
Yes.
and definitely have way more reach into what we can do. I feel like the choice should just stop there. Students should be allowed to eat. I love food. I
Mhm.
always have. I always felt like it was kind of insane how certain classes weren't allowed to eat. Know that
Mhm.
there are children that are facing food insecurities.
Oh,
They
yeah.
come hungry so 12 o'clock, 1
Oh, yeah.
o'clock to eat. They're not paying attention in class. And they're scared
Mhm.
about any type of retaliation or bullying that might come from having to ask. We're talking
Right.
about feminine hygiene products being accessible to female students. We're talking about mental health services being not just accessible to students who are referred by the teachers and the principals, but that students can just go to their door and see and just talk about their day, get things off their chest, talk about situations that are they are going through. We're talking about a lot of different avenues and a lot of different things to address to make children feel safe, because our education system was not created to keep children safe, to keep their mental health intact. It was created to give them somewhere to go, somewhere to be at. But now it is our job as social workers to make these schools somewhere to.
Mm, I love that. I love your suggestions. It's holistic. It addresses the needs of our kids. It's what they need. It addresses their physical needs, their physiological needs, their psychological needs, or social and educational needs. And I love that they're practical things that we can do to really implement. It really is a way of life, and this is one of the things that we have been really teaching schools, that mental health is not the thing to do. It's a way of life. Um, it's a way of thinking. It's a belief system. It is a paradigm shift. And if we look at it that way and approach it that way, I think that our environments would reflect it. Our kids would feel safe, like you said, and going to talk to people in the school, and being able to talk about their day and what's going on with them, and they'll have their basic needs met. These are the things that we're pushing in the organization, because we know these are the things that our kids need. And so, Quincy, we're winding up here, but you've been an absolute pleasure to chat
Thank you.
with. And I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing in the organization. Hearing wonderful things about you. I know the kids are absolutely happy to have you as their social worker. And I hope that there's more men of color, namely Black men, that step up to the plate and that you can convince to go into social work because we need you. And there is just not enough Black men doing this work. So thank you.
So thank you for having me and running this amazing organization.
Thanks, Quincy. And thank you all for tuning in and for watching. This is our fireside chat. Today, we want to say just to continue, if you are an educator and you're wanting to know more information about how do I keep my classroom safe or how do I understand mental health more, we want to be able to support you. So reach out to us. If you're interested in training, we do trainings with teachers, with principals, and you're wanting the information, you're wanting the tools, reach out to our organization. You can visit us at iracinc.org or send us an email. We love to connect with you. We appreciate all of you so much. Thank you all for watching and for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our ATL Roz podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbeam, and iHeartRadio. And our fireside chats this year are weekly now. So I won't see you again until next Tuesday. But again, thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate all of you. We love you. Stay tuned. We'll see you soon.